Hello, everybody, and welcome to Google Summer Academy 2025. This is the Google Digital Atelier meets General Assembly presentation all about Gen AI basics. We're really excited to have so many of you joining us today. We're going to be, over the next hour or so, we're going to be diving, getting deep into everything generative AI. We're really excited to talk about just how far things have come, even since we were kind of delivering a similar session this time last year. Things have moved on very, very rapidly. While we're waiting for a few more people to join us, though, it'd be great if we could, in the meeting chat, maybe have a few people introduce yourselves, tell us where you're dialing in from, and also tell us what most excites you about generative AI, and maybe even what scares you a little about Gen AI as well. So once again, maybe let us know where you are dialing in from today. If you're joining us live, let us know as well what excites you about generative AI. And also, is there anything that you're maybe feeling a bit fearful about? And in a moment, we'll maybe read out a few of those messages. So do, if you can, go ahead and find that. There we go. We're starting to have a few people let us know. So we've got Jürgen in Switzerland, Anya also in Switzerland in Zurich. We should also have Blue. Oh, great. Blue is dialing in from Bangkok. We've got Naz, who is a fellow Londoner. Great to have you here, as well as Anna as well. So yeah, as well as letting us know where you're dialing in from, great if you could let us know what you're excited about, and also what maybe what you're fearful about as it pertains to Gen AI. And great to have well, people from around the world. You've got Chiranjeevi in India, Amrita as well, saying namaste from India. And we've also got Berlin, we've got Bern, we've got quite a few people from across the Germanic speaking world. And VJ in New Jersey, we've also got some people from the United States as well. Fantastic. Okay, well, let's get kicked off. Thanks for introducing yourselves. Love the fact that we've got Blue saying no fear, just want to master the beast. And we've got Maria saying, I'm a beginner, I want to get to AI more from work. Just to introduce myself very quickly, my name is Tom Szekeres. I'm the founder of Regrow, a digital consultancy helping companies apply generative AI. I actually got my kind of start in generative AI. This is my kind of generative AI origin story. This happened during the 2020 pandemic. And maybe while a lot of people were learning how to bake breads or using some of that extra time they had perhaps to learn a language, or maybe like a lot of us, they were actually spending time trying to tutor their kids. During that time, I actually decided it would be a great idea to take a spreadsheet that someone was sharing around in my neighborhood of different businesses, local businesses that were delivering when you couldn't get an online delivery slot. I decided it'd be a great idea, first of all, to turn that spreadsheet into a website, and then actually to turn that website into a single platform that would allow you to order from over 40 suppliers, over 400 products from your local neighborhood. And to begin with, one of the big challenges was making sure that we were able to predict who was likely to order on a given day, so we could create really efficient routes for our electric van delivery and our bicycle delivery. We would then also want to use classic machine learning to predict, who might actually churn as a customer. Could we send them a special offer? All of this classic type of machine learning that we've been doing now for maybe 15 years or more. But 2 months in, there was this release of a model called GPT-3, which, to be honest, today we would laugh at. It was so basic compared to today's incredibly modern models. But I found it was incredibly useful because I had no team really to speak of. It was incredibly useful to help me generate product pages, generate ideas for email subject lines, take a bunch of information that our suppliers had given us and turn that into FAQs, to do some basic customer service, some SMS messages, some website code. And I found, even though at the time it wasn't very good, it still saved me a lot of time. And it was this amazing new thing. And since then, I've gone on to kind of help companies of all sizes get to grips with this technology. And yeah, big hello to those of you who are just joining us. You are in the right place if you are indeed here to learn all about Gen AI and get a bit of an introduction there. So that's an introduction to me. I'm actually here with General Assembly. We're really glad you're here. General Assembly is at the forefront of tech talent development, specializing in today's most in-demand skills. These include engineering and software development. And by the way, there is still a massive need for engineering and software development skills, despite everything you may have heard. Equally, there's more than ever a desire for product management and user experience design skills. There are still great needs for digital marketing skills. All of these things are massively evolving because of that one that is kind of third on the list there. Of course, this is why we're here today, all about data, all about AI. And before we get properly started, just a couple of quick reminders. This is a beginner level overview of generative AI. However, you can bring some kind of intermediate or advanced questions if you'd like. There will be time at the end for some Q&A, so do start dropping those questions into the meeting chat if you so desire. This is actually the kind of three of us behind the scenes last year. Funnily enough, we're in the exact same order this year, slightly different backgrounds though. If you can make sure that when you send a message, make sure you're aware that you are sending it to everybody, so keep it polite and keep it respectful. Use the meeting chat as a bit of a car park or a parking lot for any general subject matter questions. And also do feel free to use reactions to make it extra fun. There we go. I'm going to give a couple of little tooty horns or party poppers, whatever those happen to be. Love the reaction from Blue. They're going, So do use those to make it extra fun and interactive. What are you going to be learning today? Well, we're going to be talking all about what are large language models, what are some of the benefits and limitations, what are some guiding principles for ethical AI use. We'll talk about best practices for writing effective prompts. And by the way, I'm just going to give me a thumbs up just to check out they can still hear me. Can you still hear me okay? Yeah, there we go. Thumbs up. Fantastic. We're also going to review a couple of real-world examples of AI use cases. These are brand new and updated for 2025. And we're going to do some live AI demos with Gemini, both Gemini Personal and also Gemini for Google Workspace. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive in and let's get into explaining what are large language models, these kind of this tech that underpins generative AI. Before we kind of give you an explanation, I want to know from you what actually comes to mind when you hear the words AI, or what comes to mind when you hear the words artificial intelligence. What is it that springs to mind there? So let us know in the meeting chat. I'll start reading a few ideas out. And also, great to see that we have as well in there a link to the Google Atelier YouTube channel, which of course you can click on. That will also be, by the way, something you can subscribe to if you happen to be watching this a bit later on YouTube. Okay, so for Brigitte, LLMs are synonymous with artificial intelligence. For Lisa, it's that very first breakout product that came on the scene, ChatGPT. For Stefan, it's the hardware that underpins it. It's these graphical processing units, these GPUs. For Amrita, it's this idea that goes back actually a long time of robots. This word that actually came from, I believe it's over 100 years old, this idea of robots that came from a Czech writer who was writing about the future. For Christian, it's all about emulating human reasoning. Yeah, and we'll get to talking about what reasoning is a bit later on. For Tesoro, it's magic. For Rene, it's Robota. It's a new tool at work. It's Gemini. It's marketing automation. It's easier life. For Chiara, response to a question, statistic, machine learning. Actually, there we go. I want to kind of pause a little bit on this term that Kristen has brought up, this idea of machine learning. And although I think everybody is pretty much using this term AI right now, meaning this kind of broad technology that is supposed to allow machines to perform tasks that would typically require human-like intelligence, we have to remember that AI has been around as a term since 1956, and its use has evolved dramatically over that time. And it kind of means whatever people want it to mean at any given moment. Actually, perhaps a far more grounded term is this idea of machine learning, and this idea that actually the main technology we talk about today is machine learning, actually a subset which we call deep learning. Now, can anybody in the meeting chat tell me, deep learning is based on artificial neural networks, these kind of artificial representations of how we think brains work in terms of generating outputs. But I want to know, how long have artificial neural networks been around? What kind of decades do you think they've been around since? Let me know in the meeting chat. And yeah, people are saying 40 years, 20 years, maybe since the 1980s. That is, I'm afraid to say 40 years. I'm a child of the 80s. So yeah, the 1980s, in case anybody's feeling depressed now, that is 40 years ago. Actually, Rayan, you are right. Artificial neural networks have been around since the 1950s, but it's only been really for the last 15 or so years that we have actually been able to employ them at scale. And this is because it's taken so long for compute power to catch up, for the amount of data that we have to catch up, and for the hardware to catch up. Okay, so actually, deep neural networks are the types of AI that we've been using for the last 15 years that allow Gmail to so accurately categorize this email as spam or not spam, that also allow, for example, YouTube to come up with such an addictive algorithm that surfaces up videos that are going to be incredibly useful to you based on your interests, based on your job, based on your kind of learning patterns. So we've been using and employing deep learning really for the best part of 15 to 20 years, but it's only since 2017 that we have essentially turned deep learning on its head, because deep learning essentially would take something like an image and infer some patterns from that image and be able to tell you, this is an astronaut in this image. What generative AI does is it turns that pattern matching on its head, and it allows a model to create new original content such as images, music, or text based on the patterns and styles it has learned from a data set, which is amazing, and it's very, very powerful. However, it is only going to be able to replicate what it has learned from that data set. Okay, so for this reason, this is why we end up with, in some cases, biased outputs, or even worse in other cases, potentially hallucinations. And hallucinations, very particularly, are a feature, and I kind of use that term willingly, a feature, in some ways not a bug, of large language models. Now, large language models are, to my mind, the technology that have really transformed things since the likes of ChatGPT came on the scene in November 2022. They were actually based on a kind of technology or an architecture, we should say, that Google DeepMind created in 2017, this architecture that we call transformer models. Now, these models are capable of processing and generating not just text, they can also do audio, they can do images, and they can even do video by training on vast amounts of data and inferring patterns. And they do this what we might call one token at a time. And now in the chat, just tell me, who can tell me what actually is a token? can anybody tell me what is a token, and why is this kind of word important? Okay, so we might actually just get into this very, very briefly. But when a large language model, like, for example, the ones that are used in Google Gemini, when they're generating a really cogent response to our question, they're actually doing this one token at a time. And essentially, this is kind of I suppose, an exercise in statistics. So you might have a sentence like, the promise of large language models is that they... Now, actually, what a large language model is doing is each time it gets a sequence of tokens like this, it is predicting what is a really good token to bring in next. Okay, so it's based on probability. And if you look at the entirety of, let's say, every book that has ever been published, the entirety of, crawling the entire internet, crawling every single scientific paper that has ever been published, when you have a sequence of tokens that look like this, the promise of large language models is that you can calculate using statistics that it is 60% likely that the next token would be the word can. Okay. The issue being is that if you always use the token that is the next most likely token, you actually end up with quite a boring response. So what transformers and what LLMs do really well is they don't just look at the singular next word. They actually look at maybe some potential diverging pathways, and they look at it and they go, well, actually, if we were to choose can, that wouldn't be as interesting as if we chose a word like capture. Okay, so we're actually not going to choose the word can, even though in our vast training data, that was the statistically most likely next token. And so this is the reason why we end up with really good, coherent, well-written text, and it doesn't come out as really boring and staid all the time. The thing is, though, that this is also the reason why we end up with hallucinations, because sometimes the top answer would be your non-hallucinated answer. It would be the correct answer. But the nature of LLMs is that sometimes they will choose a less likely next token because it will make for better writing, or better, if you like, better, more creative images, or better, more creative video. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why LLMs are good at writing creative text, and they know a huge amount about the world. And of course, they can be fine-tuned to specific tasks, and they're always on. But we have this problem that they hallucinate, that, yes, we can kind of get them to do something called thinking, but they are not truly reasoning in the way that humans reason. This is also why we need to be very careful about the information that we put into our prompts to reduce the likelihood that we would then have a hallucinatory output. But Marek asked me a good question: how is a better or more creative? Like, how can we measure an output of an LLM in terms of creativity? It's a really great question. The way that the AI labs tend to do this is they tend to use a technique that is called reinforcement learning from human feedback, which sounds very technical, but really it just means when you're using Gemini, you can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to a response, and that information gets fed back to the AI labs, and they will then tend to work out, actually, real human users, they tend to prefer these more creative, better written responses. That, in a nutshell, is how they measure it. You can experience this for yourself if you go to a website called LLM Arena, and you can actually pick which response do you prefer. that tends to be something that the LLMs labs do to the AI labs do to kind of work out which is a better response. Okay, so this is one of the issues that we have with LLMs. One of the things, though, that we can do to dramatically improve their performance is we can give them a load of context. Now, I just want a quick show of hands, a quick thumbs up or thumbs down. Who has heard? It's a very new term. Who has heard of the term context engineering? Has anybody heard this term? Shelby's like, nah. Sophie Ida's heard of it. Yeah, so we are starting to hear probably about 50-50 of people have heard of this term. It actually is a term that has come from one of the kind of OG originators of LLM, a guy called Andrej Karpathy. It's this idea that actually giving good prompts isn't enough. We need to bring in a lot of context. Whether that context is a bunch of brand guidelines or a YouTube video, or maybe it could even be an image that we scan and provide to the LLM. Context is everything. And what is really helpful these days is that we've gone from maybe GPT-3. I'd have been lucky if I could put the HTML from a single web page into the original GPT-3. Now you can actually put an entire YouTube video, an hour-long YouTube video, into one of Gemini's models. They can actually cope with what are called 1 million tokens, which represents, well, some of the newer models, even 2 million tokens. This represents either 1 hour or 2 hours of video. So you now have this brilliant situation, and I'll try and get this to play if I can. I need to go back to the right tab. Bear with me 1 second while I go to the right tab, and I just need to click play on this. How do I? Oh, I need to go. Oh, sorry, everybody. I need to just go to, where even is it? Yeah, here we are. Okay, fantastic. Bear with me 1 second, and I can play this video. This is actually where we've got a 44-minute movie, and you can actually now do this inside of Google Gemini. And the prompt says, find the moment where a piece of paper is removed from the person's pocket and tell me some key information on it with the time code. And so the model has now come back, and this is, by the way, an older version of Gemini. It's come back with the time code. We can go and look and see what genuinely happens. And the model correctly is able to grab that information, and it even gives the price, and it even says who signed that particular ticket. We're now in a world where we can have an input being an image, a line drawing, and we can say what is the time code when this happens. And obviously it's a line drawing of someone underneath some kind of water butt taking some kind of shower, and there we go, it's correctly pointed out. This is the area where we need to have a look at, and there is the exact moment that goes underneath that particular water butt. You can start to see some really interesting applications, in particular when we're using these, we'll call them foundation models actually, rather than purely say that they are language models, because this is obviously using not words as tokens, but video as tokens, or audio as tokens, or images as tokens. But kind of more than this, once we start to realize that we can ingest vast amounts of image data or text data or audio data, and once we realize that actually there are going to be some real pitfalls with doing this, we have to start thinking about how we can essentially consume and be empowered by this technology while being guided by ethical principles. By the way, in the meeting chat, Chiranjeevi says, how can you create your own LLM? That's a really good question. I would, if you want to get started, you could go to a website like Hugging Face. You will not be able to create a huge LLM, because I imagine you wouldn't have the hardware to do that, but you can create a small language model if you're excited about that. I would say, though, if you're enthusiastic, though, it's probably less these days about creating your own LLM, and maybe it might be more interesting Google have got some great resources on this. You might be interested in creating your own AI agent, but we might talk about that a little bit later on. Anyway, some guiding principles for ethical AI uses. You have to remember, when you're using chatbots especially, you need to make sure that you always check the outputs. AI will quite often hallucinate an answer. And I actually had a really great example of this a little bit earlier on. And I might even see if I can sort of demonstrate this, and we can kind of go maybe over to a different tab that I have on my machine. Let me see if I can actually do that. I think I have to go back. Oh yes, here we go. And I have to go to, here we go, entire screen. And I'm going to go to screen 2. And hopefully in a moment, you'll be able to see that I'm inside. This is my kind of version of, here we go. Yeah, thanks for the thumbs up, Lisa. This is my version of Gemini for Google Workspace. This is our kind of internal version. And earlier on, I was gonna show you a demo of bringing in a YouTube video. And this is actually a YouTube video that is from that person I mentioned earlier on, Andrea Carpathy. And I can tell you, I can actually show you this video if I kind of open this up. Talking about different large language models and how they're changing software, right? Watch what happens when I hit enter and I say, help me get to grips with the subject matter of this video. Look at that. It's an excellent video. It does a great job of explaining the fundamental concepts behind electromagnetic induction. It's completely hallucinated because it's thought about what is most likely to be a response, and like the kind of response that would be plausible. It does a great job of explaining the fundamental concepts behind. It then has a choice between a whole bunch of next tokens, and it's decided to use the next token, electromagnetic, from which it's then locked into a path of going down this route. Okay, so you'll notice there as well, I can actually ask it to redo. And this time, aha, it's actually worked out. It cannot access the content. This is good information. I'm glad it told me that the second time. But yes, if I actually go, by the way, to a version of Google Gemini that has access to YouTube, I get something very different. I can actually ask it, help me get to grips with the subject matter of this video. And here it is now going to connect to YouTube, and it's going to bring that video into what's called its context video window. First of all, it looks at the description and it brings out some interesting elements there. I can now get Gemini to watch the entire video. I have to put watch in inverted commas, but it's now going to watch the entire video. We can even look at what its thought patterns are while it's watching that video. And now it's actually going to give us a much better, much more grounded response because it's actually doing the thing that we've asked it to do. It hasn't hallucinated on that. So there we go. It's now using something called the YouTube tool. It's got use audio video tokens to delve deeper into the visual and audio content together. And it now has some really interesting insights from that video. And I could now actually talk to this specific chat window and get some much deeper insights about that. Including, I could actually say, help me pull out the key insights for a beginner audience who are using chatbots. Okay, and it's now going to think about what is going to be pertinent to a beginner audience who are using chatbots rather than the audience, the original audience, which is software developers. Okay, so we'll kind of come back a little bit to that later on. We need to recognize potential risks. We need to always check the output. we don't want to fall asleep at the wheel and become overly reliant on these tools. We need to keep our critical thinking about us. We also need to be very aware of bias. Bias in, bias out. LLMs have a huge amount of bias in their training data. And I will say AI labs are actually doing the best they can to remove, as far as they can, their bias from the training data, but it does exist in there. We can use techniques like grounding and context to reduce biased outputs is the kind of good news there, okay? You need to recognize there are a lot of limitations. There is a lack of what we can call embodied human experience. This means that most of these models, they don't have, if you like, a true understanding of how the world works and how physics works, although that is changing. They also have limited access to complete up-to-the-minute real-time information, perhaps with the exception of Grok 4, although Grok 4 has a whole host of other quite bad problems. Mecha Hitler, anybody? So the other thing is that we also need to make sure that we use these techniques of fact-checking and verification. And actually, in just one moment, I've kind of shown that in the wrong window there. And actually, in just one moment, I'm just going to very quickly show you how you can do this, for example, inside of Gemini. So let's just quickly look at that. So, for example, you see here that I've actually got this very, very plausible answer here. I actually have this tool that says double check response. So I can click double check response. It's searching on Google. I'm imagining it's searching actually for that video on Google and understand the results. It's actually going to look at, okay, it's actually only fact checking in this instance, the information that it has said in its response. Unfortunately, it hasn't fact checked the original prompt itself, but we have to be really, really careful about fact checking and making sure that we're not pulling through misinformation, for example, from the web. What about the environmental impact? Well, this is actually quite an interesting element here. And at this point, I have to do this really annoying thing where I end up being holier than thou. And essentially, one thing that I have to point out to everybody is that actually you as an individual using tools like Gemini or ChatGPT, you as an individual, you are not having in any way any kind of measurable impact on the environment by using these tools, at least not for now. You would have to use ChatGPT 50,000. You'd have to ask ChatGPT or Gemini 50,000 fewer questions to have roughly the same environmental impact as buying LEDs and fitting LEDs to your entire home. However, this is dwarfed by other things that you could do. For example, switching to a plant-based diet is fairly good. Switching to an electric car will dramatically reduce your environmental impact. Or you can be like me. I live car-free. That is a huge, huge, huge impact. I have switched to green heating. I have this year avoided one transatlantic flight. I am in the process of deep retrofitting my house. So believe me, I care about the environmental impact of these tools. The one exception that I will say, thank you, Lisa, for this isn't about me. This is just to say I'm not somebody who is a greenwasher. The one exception that I will say is that it is actually very, very, very environmentally intensive to use AI to generate a video. That actually uses a not insignificant amount of energy. So I tend not to use AI to generate videos. That's just a personal preference. However, I have friends and family who work in the TV production area. And in terms of TV production, actually creating a film set uses a huge amount of energy, uses a huge amount of water, and so on and so forth. So that kind of talks about the environmental impacts. Yeah, so JH says this only takes CO2 into consideration. Well, actually, oh, sorry, let me just go back here. Well, actually, this is a really great resource, I think. It's not just CO2, it's actually also water. My understanding is that, and by the way, this is for the average American. Mostly here we are from Europe and some people from Asia. So we actually do, in theory, use a lot less energy and water. But each of these dots is one ChatGPT prompt. This is how much the average American uses each day. It's a huge amount for energy. It's also a huge amount for water. Okay, so each bottle of water here represents 20 to 50 ChatGPT prompts. There are so many other ways in which you can dramatically reduce your water usage. And again, that includes, oh, and this, by the way, is one ChatGPT prompt's worth of water. The water isn't the problem. Sorry, ChatGPT or Gemini isn't really the problem here. The problem actually is how we've kind of designed our sort of wider societies. The one exception, again, I'm going to pick on Grok 4. Grok 4 was trained really terribly, in my humble opinion. By the way, this is my personal opinion. Really terribly, it was trained using gas-fired powering data centers. Those data centers were in North Virginia, where they have lots of coal power and gas power. Lots of local communities are suffering from air pollution because of these models being trained in that particular fashion. So this is why it is incredibly important that we have, if we are going to use and train these models, that we do so in a way that is environmentally sustainable. So yeah, very key consideration there. But in terms of chatbots, this isn't where the big environmental impact is coming from. Actually, traditional machine learning uses vastly more CO2. This includes things like recommender systems. When you shop on e-commerce websites, recommender systems use a huge amount of energy, as do AI powered or machine learning powered technologies, like every time you watch something on Netflix versus watch something on traditional television. So let's think about now using generative AI and the fact we do have, we are here for Google Atelier, but of course, there are various other tools that are available. What is quite amazing to me is the fact that actually a lot of these tools now are all very much at the pinnacle. So whether you're using Gemini or Grok 4 or Mistral Large 2 or GPT-4o or O1 or Claude Opus 4.1, whatever you're using these days, actually they all perform at a really high level. There isn't really that much difference between them. The differentiation comes a lot more from what you can actually bring in to these models. So, for example, some of the advantages with Gemini, for example, is that you can bring in Gmail, you can bring in YouTube videos, you can use tools like Notebook LM to generate podcasts or Canvas to generate web, it's like interactive web stuff. So, for example, earlier on, I think I was doing this, over on this version of kind of Gemini here. So I was actually wanting to use Canvas, and I had a prompt earlier on that I'm just going to copy paste that I was using just earlier on. Where is it? Let me see. Oh, where was that prompt? I kind of had it already, everybody, loaded up into my little kind of keyboard, clipboard. I'm gonna get, okay, we're just gonna have to do this live. So look, my prompt is gonna be, can you please generate and I'm gonna say an interactive web page based on this slide, okay? And I'm gonna bring in this context of an image. It's actually an image of a slide we've already seen. Here it is. And now I've given it this tool that we call Canvas. And this allows it to actually write some code. And you'll see in just a moment, it opens up this little panel to the side. It creates a kind of simulator. It's an interactive web page. And you can now see I have now this thing that says at a very high level, it generates the next token. So you can see there it says can, will, are, captured, could. I can now click to generate the next token. And there we go. It's ended up choosing can. I can now change this up. I can say, actually, do you know what? I would really like, let's see, I really want to have the GA brand guidelines. So let's have the GA brand guidelines. Let's bring those in here. Where are the GA brand guidelines? Hopefully I have them to hand. There we go. Named. There we go. I can actually now say, let's make this more on brand. And I want to be able to hover over individual words and see their tokens. And by the way, tokens are actually what the LLM sees isn't the promise of large language models, is that it actually ends up seeing a sequence of numbers like this instead. So that's basically what's happening. So look, we're going to come back to this in just a moment. But what I've done is I've provided more context, a PDF with brand guidelines, and we'll kind of come back to that in just a moment and see what's going on. Other LLM platforms have their own unique features. Grok 4 has access to all of Twitter for kind of some real-time stuff. You have Mistral AI has access to, for example, Agence France Presse and various other kind of verified news sources. ChatGPT has access to tools like advanced voice mode. It also has access to a new agents tool, and Anthropic has access to a load of different tools through a new technology called MCP that allows people to build plugins that are actually for almost any platform. So there's lots to kind of choose from. And just to kind of go back, by the way, to what we saw earlier on, we now have everything in brand colors. I can actually hover now over those little token IDs, which is really interesting. I'm going to generate the next token. And it's kind of gone for can. So what I would now want to say is, please don't just generate, don't just choose can, make it more likely that a more interesting token gets chosen. There we go. Now that should hopefully be something that we can kind of work on together in Canvas there. Okay, so some information about prompting and also bringing in good context. We want to be really clear and specific. We probably want to specify format and length. Asking for multiple perspectives is a great idea. I put here context is queen. Don't worry, I even it out later on and say context is king, just to be really fair and balanced. And also you want to make sure that you refine and experiment. So rather than, let's say you're a marketer and you want some SEO keywords for a blog post on eco-friendly living, we want to give it much more clarity and specificity. So we can say, I want very specifically 10 SEO keywords. Here's the target audience. Here is what they are trying to do right now. Rather than saying, write a caption for LinkedIn, linking to the article, and maybe I've shared a link to the article, maybe I haven't. Instead, I want to be much more specific about format and length. Create a concise 100-word LinkedIn post linking to the above article. The caption should include relevant emojis. Ensure the post starts with a hook, followed by the key point and brief call to action. That is going to give you a much, much better output than this kind of shorter example on the left-hand side. Rather than saying, what are your thoughts on social media and not really guiding the model, we could say instead, I'm researching a blog post aimed at parents of US teens. Present two contrasting arguments regarding the impacts of social media on society, considering both positive and negative effects.
And actually, by the way, this specific prompt is actually a really great example for what we could end up using if we want to use something called deep research. Okay, so deep research is a tool that exists across many different platforms. I can click here to ask it to do some deep research. What it will do now is, first of all, take my existing prompt and turn it into a much, much better brief to give to an LLM. Okay, so it's going to give it a much, much, much better brief, we hope. So it's going to take a short amount of time to do this. So we're going to come back to that a bit later on. But by asking for multiple perspectives, you are not getting the LLM to accidentally write itself into a corner. If you ask it to present an argument, it will give you the next most likely token, or a kind of token with a reasonable probability. That will then give you an argument with a reasonable probability, rather than an argument that looks at both sides. By asking for both sides, we get it to look at multiple perspectives and we get a better output. We also have this real need to provide as much context as possible. So let's imagine we're at Google, we want to come up with a tagline for a PR announcement of the new Pixel 10. If we don't provide any context, then essentially the LLM is just going to extrapolate, and it's going to imagine what a new Pixel 10 would be like, and would not have any of our information about what it would be like in reality. So instead, we would want to provide it with information about our brand guidelines, the product sheets, our draft press release. We would want to ask it to use all of the above information, create a tagline that incorporates the information above and key benefits. So yeah, context is absolutely everything. It's a really, really important thing, okay? And then finally, we need to get into the habit of refining and experimenting. One of the great things, by the way, that we just saw here is that we kind of refined and we experimented. I can even say, I can even kind of iterate and say, the headline looks really off. Times New Roman. Okay, so we're kind of continuing to iterate there. With this example, using deep research, I can now check this brief that it's come up with, and this looks pretty good to me. It's a much more fully fledged brief. I can now click Start Research. And because deep research is kind of a research agent, it's now going to go away and work on this challenge for me in the background. It says you can leave this chat in the meantime. So we're going to come back to that a little bit later on. But I'm now going to talk to you about refining and experimenting. So we've got this example of like maybe generating an image. And by the way, generating an image, I was really surprised to learn that generating an image is not very energy intensive. It's almost on a par with generating text. It's generating videos that is truly energy intensive, just for those of you who care about this sort of thing. But look, here we are. And we're going to start off with that strawberry example. Create an image of strawberries in water for my beauty brand. Okay, so we've just given it a very short prompt. Because it's a thinking model, it's going to have a little think about what it might consider. It's considering aspect ratios and so on and so forth. It's even thinking about what this would look like. It's going to go for a 1-to-1 square ratio for versatility. It's quite open-ended, so a simple, visually appealing composition that can work well across platforms. This, by the way, is an example of a thinking model, a reasoning model. But it's come up with this. And I actually do work with a couple of beauty brands, and this isn't it. This isn't what I want. Okay, so I'm going to actually go back to the drawing board and iterate. And so I'm going to now maybe think a little bit different. Maybe I'm going to provide a bit more information, like maybe this is what our product is, and maybe we want it to kind of have them splashing into water. I don't want them like in a bowl there. I want it like an abstract image or something there. So what we're essentially doing is not sticking to our original prompt and being happy with it. We click the edit button. We don't just like work essentially back and forth in the chat window. We restart the chat each and every time, because as soon as you iterate on something that it's already created, you're locked into a particular path. It's far better to actually iterate and work out what is going to be much better. Okay, so there we go. That's better, but it's still not quite right for my purposes. So I'm just going to go one more time. And this time around, I'm going to go for a much more descriptive idea. I've talked about why I want it to splash into clear water. And again, I can click update, and this will start a brand new iteration. And hopefully this then ends up getting me closer to what I'm really looking for. Oh, look at that. We've now got a much more on-brand title there. And we've even got that feature where it shows me which token refers to which word, which is great. Lovely stuff. Okay, so that's essentially what we want to be doing. We want to be refining. We want to be experimenting. Okay. So some kind of, oh gosh, some really nice takeaways here. I'm actually going to kind of breeze through the next few elements, because this, by the way, is a take-home PDF, and we really want you to be able to explore some of these case studies in your own time. And I want to get to some of your questions in just a moment. So we provided you with some real-world examples, including this ability now and turn it into video, which I think is going to be really helpful for those of us who want to generate potentially really amazing social media content, as long as we're kind of being mindful of the energy impacts. We also have some other really nice examples from Mercedes-Benz, from Moody's, from Be My Eyes, that I urge you to go and explore a little bit later on, and including some not so good case studies that are well worth exploring around people using some of these LLMs professionally and it not going so well. So a few takeaways before we get to your questions. AI is a lot more than Gemini. They're just one small part of AI as a whole. AI is a tool. It still requires all of our human expertise, and it should, of course, be used responsibly. We need to think about data privacy, ethics, the environmental impact, and so on and so forth. Personal data in your last slide. Yeah, I would say, let's go back to that last slide. It is very, very important to look at the terms and conditions of any of these AI platforms, and to be really clear on how personal data could potentially be used by the AI labs to train or retrain data. Now, whatever tool you use, you definitely ought to check out the terms and conditions. You do not want your personal data somehow being leaked into AI models. I think, though, this is more likely to happen with some of the more, I'd say less regulated chatbots. Like, for example, if you go to DeepSeek Online and use DeepSeek Online, or, for example, Qwen, or some of those other open source language models, we have no idea how they're using the data that we are putting into those models. So that is really, really important. Just want to say, before we get to your questions, you are awesome. You just spent 1 hour of your day speaking skills again. It feels, way to go. We have a special thank you today. We're offering 50% off a workshop with GA. If you enroll by the 31st of August, 2025, you can either scan that QR code there, or we might drop this into the meeting chat. You can use GA Workshops 2025 to activate this. There are, of course, terms and conditions. Of course, there are catches. It is probably, I would imagine, limited to certain territories, but we hope that you enjoy that little thank you for sticking with us. We would also love to have your feedback on today. So we are going to drop that feedback link there. In fact, we've just got that feedback link right in there. Thank you so much for dropping that in there. And yes, I am now going to go to questions. So let's have some questions. Let's kind of, we've got about 6 minutes to kind of touch on those. And I think one that we had earlier on was from Maria saying, what about copyrights? People could grab an image from Getty, which has a legal action because of the use of its images. Yeah, it's kind of a very important question here. Oh, look, and there is the final example there. I'm not sure it's like loads better than the other example, but we can kind of refine that. So I would say that, yes, you have to be very, very careful in terms of using, in particular, images that have been generated. You have to do your own work on ensuring that you are not breaking any copyrights. There is some level of indemnification by the AI labs. They will typically offer you some level of protection, particularly if you are on an enterprise plan. But still, you need to be, if you are going to be using AI generated assets, you should be working with brand managers, you should be working with legal teams, you should be not doing it in this particular fashion. Okay, Marika, what are agents and how to leverage them? Yeah, so earlier on, you saw that I asked Deep Research to go away and create a report that would inform creating a blog post. And so it created this research report. Now, how did it do that? It went away and we can actually, I think, even see some of its research. It actually went away and it looked through a huge number of sources. So it looked through, I mean, this looks like maybe 50 to 100 different resources. And it went away and did this over the course of 5 minutes. And it did a lot of thinking while it was doing this. So you'll see that it went away and it sort of thought, what's going to be on the positive side? What's going to be on the negative side? So it looked through all of these resources. It thought about some of the positive impacts, the negative impacts, some key insights. And then it decided to do some further research. It could have stopped there, but it decided to do some further research. And it looked at evidence. It looked at the 5 C's of media use. It then did further and further and further research until it felt ready to then come back and tackle the task. And this is what agents do. Agents essentially will take a request and they will go and interact with an environment. And the environment could be the web, as in this example. It could be a code base that you have. It could be that they are interacting using a phone call if they're a voice agent, or it could be that they interact with your desktop if you want them to tidy up your desktop and put your files into folders, okay? Next question from Serge, how and where can I find the record of that webinar? Do you mean this webinar from today? If you fill out the survey, then you will get you'll get access to the recording of the webinar from today. Can you show me how to create an AI video by using VO3? Yeah, okay. I don't usually like to do this because of the environmental impact, but if you divide it across all of us, this all counts for everybody's environment. This counts for all of our carbon footprint. So divide it by hundreds of people and it's totally fine. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use that same prompt, photo realistic video of strawberries splashing into clear water, new lip oil, which should come into focus in the foregrounds. The video should have focused. So there we go. So I'm now going to get it to generate a video for us. But as I say, I would use this sparingly. And it will take a couple of minutes, which we only have a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to answer a few more questions if I am able to. There are other ways in which you can leverage agents. I would definitely check out all manner of different resources out there. If you're kind of more technically minded, then Google actually have a really nice agent development kit. There is even a kind of quick start to getting started with the agent development kit. Equally, there is also some information out there on YouTube that is fantastic about agents. And we talk a lot about agentic AI at GA. Michelle, you have your hand raised. I don't know if I'm able to give you access. Can you come off mute and ask your question? I don't know if I have the power to do that, actually. I don't know if we made that work or not. But maybe you might have a question that you can drop into the meeting chat. Yeah, how to learn prompts. Oh, Michelle, are you there? Can we hear you? Maybe not. Okay, sorry, I didn't know. No worries. How can you learn how to better prompt? So I would actually say one of the best ways to learn how to prompt better is to just roll up your sleeves and do it, and to experiment with seeing, how much does an initial output match up to what you hoped for, and then not to give up if it doesn't match up, to try some of the techniques that we've talked about and which you'll have in your kind of take-home PDF that we're going to be providing you with. I think it's already in there. Link to the slide deck is in there and is already pinned to the meeting chat. I'm sure we'll be able to make that available as well in the description of this YouTube video, if indeed you're watching a little bit later on YouTube. We have now reached time. However, I'm really hopeful that it will only take another 60 seconds, perhaps, to generate this video, because I'm sure we are all waiting with bated breath to seeing what is actually going to happen, what is going to go on with that video on VO. What I will say, though, is that feature that we saw earlier on that I demonstrated, where you could take an image and then turn it into a video, that actually at the moment is only available, unfortunately, in North America right now. But hopefully we will be able to get a video any second now. And thank you. Chiranjeevi has said, give me some resources to learn about how to better write prompts. So I would say, in terms of resources that are kind of all about prompt engineering, I'm just actually going to open up something. Let's see, prompt engineering. I would actually say, it's because it's going to a folder that I have. Bear with me one second, everybody. I would actually say that there's a lot out there that is kind of a little bit out of date now. Actually, it's becoming a lot less important to be able to prompt effectively. Oh, there we go. But Evelyn has put in there a really nice link to a Google Workspace prompting guide. Thank you so much, Evelyn. And there is another summer school about prompting that is going to be in German, which is fantastic. So thank you all so much. I was really hopeful that we were going to get this video generated for us any second now. Maybe it's going to take a little bit longer than 1 to 2 minutes. Maybe it's not. I'm just going to quickly see if I can just double check. Oh, no, it is ready. Fantastic. Well, here it is. By the way, it will only generate you 8 seconds, but let's take a quick look. Here we go. And it's even generated an audio. And there we are. We have our beauty product up there, right? And you can imagine giving this to a videographer and allowing them to wrap our logo around that. There we are. Quite an impressive thing to kind of show you there. So I think that's a really great way to round out. A big thank you to everybody, and apologies if you don't actually even hear the audio in the background, because we aren't sharing this as a tab. But thank you all so much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you today. Someone asked, what is the prompt? There it is. Create a high resolution photorealistic video of fresh strawberries, blah, 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 blah. But thank you all so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Summer Academy. If you are watching this on YouTube, of course, it would be remiss of us not to say follow, like, and subscribe and explore the playlist. But thank you all. And we will see you hopefully for some later sessions. And indeed, hopefully I'll be back next year. Thank you, everybody. Cheers all.